Lewis, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And I was thinking where to start this one, and there's so many different places because when I was doing my research, obviously I know you through John and all the stuff that you're building out at Prime Property Auctions, but that seems like just the latest thing that you did after such a chunk of things way before that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my first sort of foray into business was cleaning. So it was Airbnb cleaning. So when I was 18, I was really keen to get into property. I'd read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I get it. I need to own assets.
There should be a klaxon on the podcast for that book, shouldn't there? Because it's had such a huge influence.
Yeah. So many people in property and business as well. Just the notion of owning assets that bring cash flow versus trading your time. So like, right, I need to get into property, but I don't have any money. So I probably need to get into business to generate the money. So at the time, there was a networking event called the Property Hub in Glasgow that had just stopped. It's actually Rob and Rob. I don't know if you know them, Rob Dix and Rob Moore. I can't remember the other guy's name, but
yeah, Rob Dix has been on the show. Rob, I can't remember his business partner's name, but they used to
both
run
Robs, right?
Yeah.
And I was listening to their podcast, and they had an event that used to happen in loads of different cities, and the one in Glasgow had just stopped. So I got in touch with two other guys that were keen to like start it back up, and yeah, we just started the event again. I was 18. The guys were obviously advanced. They were doing property themselves, and yeah, so we started this event. It was just like a really informal chat for investors. And one of my co-hosts, Tony NG, had 10 Airbnbs at the time, and he was struggling to do the cleaning for them. So I was like, right, see a wee opportunity here. There's a wee gap in the market. It's 2016 at the time. It's kind of a new industry. Not a lot of ancillary services to support it. So cleaning was one of the things that was massively in demand for Airbnbs. So I was like, Tony, I will build a business around you. You tell me what you want to charge, what you want me to charge, and I will service your properties. I'll clean them, and I'll provide linen for them. So that's how we get started.
You were almost filling like a little bit of a gap that you'd found for this new and emerging sector, and people listening now are like, oh, Airbnb, like so established. But back then, as you say, there was this growing sector, but it had a niggle that needed some sort of attention or help.
Exactly. So basically, I didn't know anything about business. Well, I didn't know anything about business, cleaning. I was 18-year-old boy. What the hell did I know about cleaning? But I just saw the opportunity and like built a business around Tony as my first client. So learnt on the job, got my mum doing some cleans for us, my sisters. Eventually my mum's friend that had moved from Kosovo, she didn't have a job. She was looking for something. I was like, right, I'll employ you. I used to drive her around at the weekends, like dropping her off at flats, waiting for her to finish, get taken to the next one. And it kind of grew from there. So that's how I get started in business, was with Host Clean.
The only other thing that I found right back in my deepest, darkest of research, Lewis, was you're building a forex community app.
Yes.
So that was maybe slightly pre the cleaning, and I was interested to ask you about this.
Don't know how you found that, but that was...
I can't give away my sources.
This was back in must have been like 2013 or something, 2014. So when I was in school, I was always like trying to do business. I was like bringing up like fake Gucci belts and stuff from London, and I was selling them at school, and then, or not at school, but like on Gumtree, and some people from school. And one of the things I get super interested in was trading. And at the time it was binary options. So it's like basically betting, will this currency pair go up in the next 60 seconds or go down? And I was like I basically built like a wee WhatsApp group. Well, not what, I think it was Kick at the time.
I remember
Kick. People like paid me, I think it was like £50 a week through my mum's PayPal to be part of it. And I would give them signals, and I was in school. It was just a weird thing. And eventually got chatting to like a Canadian guy and American guy, and we're like trying to build this app called Market Hub, if I remember correctly. And it was basically like a community of forex traders to get connected, to also see charts and all that kind of stuff.
Have you ever rubbed beef fat on your face? Sounds crazy, but that's what I've been doing since January with No Tox face balm. I've been really focused in the last few years on reducing the number of toxins that I take into my body, whether that's getting a filter for the water in my tap, whether that's removing things like heating plastics or drinking from plastic bottles. The skin is the biggest organ in the body, so it was about time I considered what it was I was rubbing on my skin, and that includes things like moisturizers and other potentially harmful chemicals. Since January, I've been using No Tox face balm. My skin looks and feels the best it's ever felt, and you can benefit from that too. The link will be in the show notes for notoxskincare.co, and you can use Cambro for 15% off.
So that get basically like, I can't remember what happened exactly with it, but it got taken to like funders, and I don't know if this is correct, but there was funders in Silicon Valley. I can't remember the name of the company, but they were like talking to us about basically funding this potentially as a concept, and but it didn't go anywhere. Kind of fizzled out.
Yeah, but at such a young age to be building that out when you probably had relatively limited knowledge of trading, but you're like, okay, well, I think I can build a community. Oh, I think I can build an app. I think I can build a place where traders can spend time. Quite a cool concept at such a young age.
Yeah, can't believe you found that. Like, I don't even know where to look for that stuff.
Yeah, I can't. I'll tell you after we stop recording this. But yeah, I try and do that with a lot of my guests. I try and go digging. But it is interesting. I think you're a little bit younger than me, and I think the generation that you're from and below that particularly have more opportunities to do things differently than ever before. And what was that, 2015, 2016? That wasn't
like
possible.
2013, 2014.
Wow,
yeah,
okay, so that was really early.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was going to say like 2010, that's not possible. But as time has gone on, you probably get more stories where people are doing that sort of stuff, whereas for you to be doing it back then was like completely unheard of.
Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, from there, I was like, that didn't work. And then I was like, I had all these plans in my head, and I had to kind of pull my ego in. I was like, right, I need to move out of my house. I need a job. In my head, I was going to build this community and go to Silicon Valley and all this stuff. So I was like, right, I need a job. Got a job in a restaurant as a busser, and on the side, I was basically like trying to start stuff. I like bought a bunch of selfie sticks, trying to sell them online. I'd always been involved in loads of wee businesses, but that was the next thing. And then after that, I was working in restaurants. Like, right, I can't really build anything while I'm working in a restaurant because you can't check your phone. You know,
you're literally
tables,
you're doing
right?
something manually, so you can't be on your devices at the same time.
Right. So I looked for a desk job, and I looked online, and there was this thing at AXA, the insurance company, and they were hiring business insurance apprentices. So basically, young people, 17, 18 years old, coming in, and then training them up over a period of like a few years, and then with a role at the end of it. And I was like, great, I'm gonna have 2 screens, one for my job and one for what I'm doing.
I bet you were popular.
To be honest, the managers there were great, but I ran my course with them so I started there in 2015, and then I started host clean the next year from AXA, like working at AXA full time. And it was just like, as that progressed, I was not meeting my quotas. I was sitting on not ready for what I would do is I would like find the worst other insurance company to call so that I was on a call so that I could then go and do stuff. So I was just taking the absolute
my line's
piss.
Engaged.
Absolute piss. And eventually I had a meeting with my manager, and she was showing me all my stats, and she's like, this isn't really acceptable. And I'm like, look, I totally understand. It's probably best that I just leave. And at that point, I kind of forced myself to go full time into host clean.
Yeah, it's good. And sometimes, and I've been thinking a lot of this a lot lately, given my own situation, my own circumstances. Sometimes when you're quite comfortable in your job, it's really hard to build on the side unless there's some sort of additional motivation from somewhere else. And you were clearly somebody that was motivated to build on the side, and the job was always a means to an end. But it gets to a particular point sometimes where the job's either so uncomfortable or so unpleasant, or they're so unhappy with you that you get more quickly pushed towards the full-time thing. And that's almost a blessing, because that's what really matters to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned loads from working at AXA. AXA's a multinational. All of their systems and processes, which we'll probably go into later on in the podcast, I just took and I implemented in host clean. So I've always been like, if I see something that works, I am going to learn it and I'm going to make it apply to what I'm doing. And that was one of the first things that I took. It was actually a system where they had an audit trail. You spoke to a client, you had to write down what happened, all that kind of stuff, and I implemented it straight away into host clean.
It's just the professionalization of these things. And I think when you are a young guy running a business, the expectation is that you might not be that well organized or not that professional. So if you bring that level of professionalism to Tony or some of the other clients you brought on, they'll be like, oh, it's really good to deal with Lewis and host clean, because they actually do what they said they were going to do when they said we're going to do it, because most people are horrendously unprofessional when they get started in business anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always find it funny when people shit all over their corporate job too much, but I find it really refreshing. I spoke to David Stephen, who a lot of people listening will know from the property space, and he was saying how fundamental his sales training at Sky was for what he's gone on to do with DX, and for you to be like, oh well, some of the systems that I used in host cleaning you probably use now in Prime were from this, albeit not fulfilling corporate job, but a corporate job that served their purpose. And there's a concept from a lady called Dr. Meg J, who I interviewed a couple of times last year, American psychologist, called identity capital. And we're always paying in to our identity capital with the experiences we get from our jobs, our lifestyle, and then we get to cash out on that identity capital at points down the line. And it could be really like a funny experience, like you maybe got shouted at on the phone for not paying out on a claim, and you're thinking, well, when I got shouted at by somebody who didn't get the property they wanted at auction with us, you can reflect back on those experiences and use those down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I've always been very thankful for the opportunity to work there. But I was the worst employee. I just basically went in to be able to then work on my other stuff. But the guys there were all great, and I learned a lot from there, just seeing their systems, seeing how they do things, seeing how they manage 200-300 people as well.
It's a big team, isn't it?
But a very big team, lots of layers of management. But that you can learn what to do and what not to do as well. And I applied that as well in my next sort of stage in business.
Yeah, talk to me about how Host Clean evolved and grew.
So it was initially called UK. It was called Clean to Let, right? So there was a focus there for investment or landlords or something, servicing some sort of landlord, and then we focused really on Airbnbs, because I believe that you can only really be great at very few things, and if we geared our whole business to catering to these Airbnb owners, we could outcompete everyone, because our infrastructure is purely built for them, and we could charge a premium for it. So that was the idea. So when I left AXA, kind of dived into Host Clean, growing that. Then I met my business partner in Host Clean, Yanni, who we initially hired as an office manager, and really similar values, really similar visions, and really hungry. And I was like, this guy is going to be worth working with. So Yanni came on board. I gave him half the business because he was helping with the operations. I was dealing a lot with sales. Now thinking back, sales and new business. I was trying to grow the business, systems, all that kind of stuff. And Yanni really helped out on the operation side of things. We grew to going into Edinburgh. So we had a Glasgow base, an Edinburgh base, and we grew to, I think it was about 200 properties under service across both cities.
And there must be a lot of staff to handle that volume of cleans.
Yeah, there was initially. So again, you learn through doing the wrong things. So initially we had team leaders and team members, and we tried to kind of structure it that way. But we realized, and this took 7 years, or 6 years, was that the best model for us was to subcontract the work to a company. So we would effectively be the face, the marketing, taking the money as well. So we would do the invoicing, and then we would subcontract all of the work to a Glasgow-based company and an Edinburgh-based company. So we didn't have to deal with the fulfillment of the service.
It's really interesting, because I think a lot of people would assume that, we need to have cleaners directly online to us that we manage and have particular set standards for, or set KPIs.
Like when I started Host Clean, I was writing down like manuals on how to clean a flat, like how to hoover a room, really, really in depth, but it wasn't working. And it took, as I said, 6 years to realize, or to come to a model that did work and that was more scalable. And that's something to be said about just sticking to one business, just one focus.
One of the terms I like that you use when we've spoken before is vehicle. And I think a lot of people are maybe 1 foot on the train, 1 foot on the airplane, maybe their hands touching a car, and they're kind of split focus.
Yeah, definitely. I think focus, it's kind of like something Hormozy describes it as. So you've got a bucket with loads of holes in it, and you're trying to catch water, right? Is it better to plug the holes, i.e. fix the business, get better, or get another bucket with loads of holes to try and catch the water? We know the answer, right? So there is so much that you need to do in a business to get right into scale. It's very, very tough, I think, to do it in multiple. So that was the idea behind kind of going into business with Host Clean.
And really committing to it as well. What was it like at its peak?
At its peak, so as I said, we had about 200 properties under service. We had 2 companies we were subcontracting all of our work to, and me and Yanni were effectively just, we had a phone. It's called the white phone, where whoever had the phone had to deal with all of the inquiries and also all of the complaints and all of the customer service effectively, and we would swap phones. So we'd have 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And that phone was an absolute nightmare because you get everything at any time.
Well, it's an emotive business, somebody's property, and if the turnarounds are tight as they are in Airbnb, then it needs to be done correctly. Otherwise, you're potentially causing somebody pain, but quite often a fiscal pain as well.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, you've got guests arriving at a flat in Edinburgh, and they're arriving at 4 p.m. And for example, say a clean's been missed. What do? The guests need to sleep somewhere. They need to go somewhere. So it's like a lot of last minute rushing and fixing issues and firefighting. And I think just your stress tolerance, like my adrenals probably burnt out. Like I don't feel a lot of stress because it's just having that business.
You've got a new set point.
Yeah. It's like a thermostat.
Yeah. I talk a lot about a wealth thermostat, but that's a stress thermostat.
Stress thermostat. And to be honest, the way we were running, well, as a vehicle, which we'll probably go into, for not a lot of gain.
Okay. When did you start to realise that though? If you ran it for quite a long period of time, when did you realise it wasn't the vehicle that you wanted to be in?
I mean, the fact that we managed to create what we did with that vehicle in that industry, there's no £1 billion Airbnb cleaning companies, right? Or £100 million or £10 million, I'm going to say. Even maybe less, there's not. For a reason, right? I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's a very difficult thing to solve. And because of the demand, because of how people intensive it is, it's a very supply constrained business because everyone wants cleaners and good cleaners, but the problem in the business is to find good cleaners that turn up, that are reliable, that you can pay an amount that makes the business feasible. So yeah.
It's a really difficult situation when you've got an industry where it's relatively low paid work. So the incentive for the employee is relatively low, and they can sometimes maybe swap company for a small uptick to them, but that would kill your profit margin to pay the extra £2 an hour or to give them an extra break or whatever it is they may have been promised elsewhere. In my day job, from a warehousing perspective, we'll see people be like, oh, I'm going to go to Amazon because they're paying this little extra bonus this year, or I'm going to go to this particular delivery company because it's the same stuff, but actually I'm getting this particular perk, and people will move around, and it's really hard to find good guys in that space that you want to have working for you and being the face of the business as well.
Absolutely. It's the problem to solve in that business is hiring. It's a people business. That is the business. The cleaning, it's easy to sell cleaning, as I said, because no one wants to do it. Everyone needs it. But finding the people is the challenge. So that becomes a business.
One of the things that I looked at was that you dabbled with like amalgamation of companies alongside Host Clean, but they were in a very different sector, like almost in like newspapers or flyering or something like that. What was that all about? So
again, maybe it comes down to my naivety of being able to do loads of things, right? But I came across M&A. So I see you had, was it Jeremy Harbour on the podcast recently? Basically buying companies maybe in distress, doing something with them, adding value, and then either holding on to them or whatever. So I came across that, loads of free stuff on YouTube. I watched podcasts, and I became enamored with the idea of doing that myself in cleaning, for example. So I went on this path. I'd printed loads of letters, sent loads of letters to business owners that I'd got off, I can't remember what website it was, and arranged meetings with them to see if I could negotiate a deal to acquire them and build a group, like a big service group. Didn't have a lot of success with it. Obviously, I mean, the businesses I was targeting were tiny, tiny. Looking back, like they're not businesses; they were lifestyle businesses at most. And but I found that I got an opportunity in a leaflet distribution business in Edinburgh that I'd found on one of these UK business broker websites, and gave them a call. got the details for the seller, went and met her. I mean, she had a business running. She had, I think she had a couple of vans. She had maybe 15 distributors in Edinburgh, and she was just looking to close up shop. Business itself wasn't attractive to buy, so we bought the assets, put it into a new company. Basically agreed a deal to buy the assets of the company, i.e. the brand, all the equipment, all that kind of stuff, and then just set up as I think we rebranded as well, and new website, everything, and just set up as a business. Yeah.
Nice. It is funny. Like, I came away from that episode with Jeremy being like, that's really interesting that you don't have to go 0 to 1. You can go and acquire somebody who's already at 1 and either improve it if with a weakness, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's product, whether it's the margins that are involved, you can go in and improve it. And you do come away like quite hyped up about it. But I guess we're talking about the vehicle, and I really like that type of conversation, because you need to understand that you're operating in an arena that's going to have the fat on the bone to actually make money doing it. And I guess that's another relatively low margin area, I suppose.
Yeah, because I didn't know any better. You don't know what you don't know, and I didn't have the reference, like nothing to compare it to effectively. But that was where the opportunity was. I was like, I'm just going to do it, and eventually found another very similar business in Ayrshire, and again got in contact with the seller, went and met him at his house, structured a deal that worked. This time we actually bought the shares of the company, and basically put the brands together. And one of the guys that came with the Edinburgh business was basically managing the Edinburgh business. He basically came in and said, like, do you want to manage the whole thing? I was like, yep, perfect. And then that was it. So started looking for other stuff. Eventually I had a client. One of the Edinburgh clients was I think it was like a newspaper type thing. And she was looking to just retire and I don't know what, like, I think it was go to a monastery or something.
Oh, interesting. She's had enough of the Western world.
Yeah, pretty much. And what she wanted, it was a tiny business, but what she wanted was a laptop so she could write scripture. And so we bought her a laptop, and that was the consideration for the business, effectively. So we basically absorbed that, and then I think we bought the franchise of a newspaper in Edinburgh, and then we bought another thing in Ayrshire. So it's just like it's still all relatively very small, but it was kind of a great experience because they all had staff, like regardless of how good the vehicle was, we still had to deal with, like, buying into business. There's staff there that come with it that you need to basically reorganize. So you do all the hard stuff. There was basically hardly any gain in it, but the experience was pretty invaluable, because I learned about, going into a business as a new owner and basically restructuring things.
Yeah, and in a sense turning it around as well. There's a pain that comes with that as well, because typically when there's a merger and acquisition, there comes with it redundancies or massive changes in how people's ways of working were before, and this kind of discomfort about, oh, well, that's not how we used to do it. And you think, well, there's a reason the business was up for sale. It wasn't doing as well as it should have done. And I guess, again, at such a young age for you to be involved in that sort of strategy for growing is, well, I mean, it's interesting that you came across that.
Yeah. I don't know how I did, but it's a path we're on.
We are what we consume, though. Like, you end up listening to a few podcasts like that, and you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna become an expert in that.
Just like when I hear something I like, I'm just obsessed, and I'll just do everything to do it. So I guess that was that. I was on a path of a couple of years of just wanting to be in M&A, and even if I didn't have the resources or the experience, I made it happen, albeit with not a very big business, but I got the experience of doing it. And what I found is from doing it with a bigger company, doing bigger numbers, the only difference is the numbers, effectively. And it's kind of like property. You might as well deal with bigger numbers because the work is the same, but the numbers are different, which means that the reward is different as well.
It's a good perspective, isn't it? Sometimes people don't realise that the same amount of work goes into the smaller deal as goes into the bigger deal. Like you say, the numbers are just the only difference, and the time spent can be very, very similar. So you can get a massive spike on your ROI for your hour or your week or however long you're spending on something by doing it in the right arena.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did that come to a close then with G1 Marketing?
So the guy that Ewan, the guy that was basically running the business, I said to him, so let's fast forward a wee bit. Met John through property, and we were playing badminton and stuff like that. And John had just left his old job and had started Prime in July. And I think I messaged him after the first or the second auction, just asking how he was, how things were going. And he said, yeah, good. We had our blah, blah, blah auction. We sold a few properties. It was great. I was like, look, I'm looking to get into something property related. So let's meet for a coffee. So I went, had a chat with John. And at the time, I think he was looking for partners in the business. Whether it's, partners that could put money into the business, or I think he wanted someone that was at the coalface with him, that had complementary skill sets, but that was going to be there with him, versus just someone that we could put a wee bit of money in and whatever. So that's how Prime effectively started, or the conversation about Prime started. And then we very quickly moved into, or didn't move in, but started working in his attic with him.
I remember this story that he was telling it when he was on the podcast about the garden chair.
Yeah, so I mean, there was it was a project home. They just moved in, they were doing up, and we were in his attic. I mean, he had a table and a chair. I had a table, no chair. So I was like I've got a garden chair I could bring in. Like, yeah, bring it in. So we'd sit on my garden chair, back's killing me, and just work. And said to him, like, you don't pay me anything. I just want to learn. I just want to see what we can do here. And very quickly we realised that we worked well together.
Was there anything in the background that would enable you to go to somebody like John and say that you want to work for free effectively to get started?
I think it's just, maybe I've seen the value of skills, and maybe I've seen...
For me, you're a very rational guy, so I imagine there was some sort of calculation around how it worked.
Yeah, I think it just seemed like because I was in property by that time already, and I was investing in property, and I wanted to get into a business that was property related, a trading business, right? And it just, auctions seemed interesting. It did seem interesting. So that's what prompted the message. But yeah, so just going back to how I exited G1. So fast forward a wee bit with John. 2023, I basically wrapped up G1, said to the guy that was running it, here you go. You've been doing a great job. Don't pay me anything. Just keep the business going. There's staff. My focus is elsewhere. And then with Host Clean, we sold the business to one of our contractors. So packaged a deal up that was exceptional. They couldn't say no to it. And then here you go. And again, that was just to get bandwidth. Yeah, like all of it was just to get my time and attention back, because I knew the return would be so much better in Prime.
What helped you realise that the return was going to be better in Prime?
I think John tells the story. It's kind of like in Wolf of Wall Street, where he's like, you show me a payslip for $70,000, I'll quit my job right now. So John was sitting there, and John had been in his job pretty much his whole career, didn't know any different. And he was sitting worried, like, we're going to have enough money to do this? Are we doing good? Like, I was like, right, I mean, how much money do you have in the bank? And he told me, and I was like, mate, we're going to be fine. This business is fine. And that's where I seen the opportunity.
You had the reassurance that there was enough capital coming in?
Yes. The leverage was there. So it was just John for the couple months before I joined. It was just John, and I could see what it generated from his attic. It was very, very, it's a high leverage. It's a business where you get a lot for your inputs.
And that differs massively to what we've just spoken about when it came to the cleaning business, when it came to the kind of media company, or media leaflet distribution business as well. There's like a stark contrast. So when you saw this, you were like, oh, this is a bit more like it potentially.
Yeah. And it's kind of like you're on Earth, you're dealing with gravity. It's fucking, you're putting a lot of effort to do anything, and then you actually go to the moon. Gravity's different, and you're putting the same effort, but it's a very different outcome. So it was kind of like going from a bike to a Ferrari, right? If you imagine the same inputs, I mean, you're going to go a lot faster than a Ferrari. And looking back, I would say it was a better vehicle, but if I'd stayed, I've probably figured out a way to make it higher leverage and try and solve that problem. But at the time, I seen Prime as an opportunity to really take myself to the next level.
A concept I think about quite a lot is the sunk cost fallacy. So given how much blood, sweat, tears, time you put into your other businesses, was there ever a feeling of, I've put a lot in there, I don't want to leave it behind?
I wouldn't say so. I think business for me has always been a means to an end. And the end was to invest in property. That was the reason I started Host Clean, was to invest in property. So I seen that as a better vehicle to do so, and just went all in and just like pure focus. Get rid of every other distraction. And again, it's another Hormozy thing. Focus isn't having 5 different things and then really just focusing on one. It's just eliminating 4. And then focus is inevitable. So that was the idea.
A lot of the time it's better to remove than it is to add. So I talk about that quite a lot with like morning routines. People are like, oh, I'm going to add breath work on top of my yoga, on top of my meditation, on top of my journaling, on top of my cold water. But maybe you could just remove the fact that you wake up and you scroll TikTok for half an hour while you're taking a shit and a piss, and then you don't drink your water and your supplements because you're rushing out the door to catch the train or the bus.
Yeah.
It's quite often better to remove the things that are causing you issues.
Yeah, it's easier to do. So that was the idea behind basically finishing all of my other focus apps and focusing on Prime.
How do you two dovetail? I've got to see it publicly and I really enjoy it, but how would you describe it?
So I came in. So I had skills I developed being in business. Although I'm still young, but I'd been in business a few years and I'd learned about systems, structures, just making things happen. Right. John was in sales, very good salesman, very good at relationship building. So that was our 2 different skill sets, and we matched very well to start in the early stages of Prime. And then I seen this. I think everything's a skill you can learn, right? So I seen John's skill in building relationships and negotiating, doing all that kind of stuff, and I was like, I need to learn this. So initially, I was like, right, everything he's saying, I am going to say the exact same thing. The way he was talking to his clients, the cadence in his voice, the words he was using, I literally replicated the exact same thing. And I had when I started in the attic, I had a massive document. I think it was like 7 or 8 pages, just everything about auctions, the industry. I went deep dive. Why do people do this? Why do people do that? What's this company charging? Why do they charge that way? I would just ask John all these questions, just suck all the information out. And I started building a picture in my head of what I was getting into. But yes, I would just listen to what John was doing, and as he was saying it, literally, I would be saying it while I was on the phone. And skill, the skill is leverage. So John was making a few calls and he was getting a lot of output. I seen that I didn't have any leverage because I had no skills in this. So I just had to crank up the inputs to develop the skills.
Volume was the answer.
Yes, volume, just fucking brute volume. I would cold call like 30 to 40 sellers every single day, from Gumtree, from Facebook Marketplace, wherever I could get the details. Empty homes officers. I would just call everyone, and at the start, obviously you don't have a script, or you're just kind of making your way through it. But eventually, through the reps, you develop a script and you get better, and you say, right, that worked when I said that didn't work. Let's take that out. And eventually, I just started signing up loads of properties cold, like just. John didn't give me any leads. He's like, right, whatever you sign up, we'll go 50-50 on the commission. So I was like, right, let's go. And I would just cold call every single day and just bring in leads, sign them up. And that's kind of, that was the skill I seen in John that I wanted to replicate. And to do so, it was just basically do what he does times 10. Input wise,
it's interesting because he's been in the space for over a decade at that point. He is very highly skilled. So as you say, his hour of calls is a day or 2 days worth or 3 days worth for you because of the level of ability he brings to that one phone call. And you have to be like the swan or underneath the water, furiously paddling its legs to keep up. But over time, you become closer to that so that you become a bit able to invest the same amount of time for a similar sort of output, albeit of course there's always going to be outliers and like absolute mavericks, but you can start to get closer to that by doing a lot of things. And I don't know if it's Hormozy that said this, but it takes 40 hours to become highly skilled or an expert in many things, but most people delay that for 40 years. Yeah. And I really think that when I look at your story and I look at how fast Prime's growing and you've developed alongside John as his business partner, it was just absolute hard graft while iterating on the skills in the background to start to make that hard graft of a better quality?
Yeah, because reps, I mean, just doing the same thing 40 times is not going to make you better. It's doing it and then, right, what did I do right or wrong? And iterating as you improve. But yeah, I'm very big believer of, if someone is ahead of you in a particular skill, don't change what they're doing. Replicate until you're as good or better, and then you can start iterating. But until you're at that point, you need to just do what they're saying, basically.
What were some of the biggest things you learned from John in those early days?
Picking up the phone and just speaking to people. So John would just sit and call a client, and I've not spoken to him in ages. Call a client, and then something comes off it. I think I was very much like beforehand, spreadsheets and organize this and systems and processes for that and this software, blah blah blah. But what's actually moving the business forward? It's sales and it's conversations and it's opportunity hunting. It's not trying to organize the mess that you create when you do that. You need to create the chaos and then organize the chaos. I was just organizing.
That's interesting. You see a lot of people, it's almost like intellectual masturbation, where they do this in the background, like, oh, when the leads come in, this is how they're going to get processed, and this is what they're going to get sent, and this autoresponder, and this terms and conditions for them to sign. But really, at the start, you just need so many things to come in the top of the funnel to prove the concept in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So create the chaos, create the flow, as Hormozy says. Then I think it's monetize, and then it's add friction, something like that. And it's just like, you need to create the flow. And you don't need a website, you don't need business cards, you don't need this. You need sales, you need money in the bank. So go and make the calls, and then the rest will come. The rest will sort itself out.
I think so. I really respect your attitude to learning, and one of my regular roundtable guests is Chris Burns, the Savage Scholar. And one of the first times I heard your name, Lewis, was that you were working with Chris to get some support from a copywriting perspective. Yeah. And the mad thing about Chris is he's just this cool guy from Cumbernauld that me and a few of my friends know because we were into fitness when we were younger, posting on Instagram. If he wasn't from this part of the world, we would never have access to him, because he's worked on launches for like Matt Fraser, Steffi Cohen, all these huge names in the US and Canada. But we just happened to get on with him and know him because he's from our local area. What was it like working with him?
It was great. It was absolutely great. So just again, skills. I see the importance of skills. So I met Gary from Let Property, and blew my mind with how good he was at copywriting and ads and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, right, I need to learn how to write copy, good copy for advertising. And I just went, right, who's the best copywriter I can get access to? And I came across Chris's Instagram page, Savage Scholar. And I messaged him like, mate, I'd be interested in getting like one-to-one coaching. Like, charge me whatever you want, I'll do it. So basically got working with him. He would give me certain tasks every week, like write copy for this, think about it in this way. I would write it, send it back, and then he would like analyze it and break it down. Be like, right, this is good. This probably reword it this way. Add this in. Really, really helpful exercise. And it wasn't to become a world-class copywriter. It was just so that copywriting was no longer a point of constraint. It was good enough for what I wanted to do. So I wouldn't say I'm not a great copy. It's not a constraint anymore. So I can write copy, I can look at ads and be like, right, that's a good headline. Why is this a good headline? And can I take it from there?
I think it's great though, because I think if you think about all the different areas where people can get in touch or see Prime for the first time, of course it's the reels that you guys put out there now, but it's also the written content and how you speak on those reels, which has quite often been written previously, and it's the hook that you use, and that all comes from the quality of your ability to put pen to paper or fingers to type and actually get those ideas out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's just seeing the value of that skill. Let's find someone that's great at it to learn from effectively.
One of the phrases we use in the podcast quite a lot is stand on the shoulders of giants. And I think the way that you have utilised information from Hormozy, that's really clear that you've done that. But in the same way, you saw John as somebody that's a bit of a giant in the sales world, and then you see Chris as somebody that's a bit of a giant that's accessible within the copywriting world. Why on earth would we not try and get a hand up or a leg up from somebody like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, do what they do. I mean, going back to like negotiation, stuff like that, I read Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference over lockdown, I think it was. And one of the things that he said in his story was that when he applied, so he was an ex FBI hostage negotiator, and in his story, when he applied for the job, the person that was hiring was basically said, I can't remember what happened, but there's no spaces or something, but go and volunteer at a suicide hotline to get some experience on. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to do that. And the next week, I'd signed up for this English suicide hotline to learn how to have conversations with people in really difficult situations, and implement what that book taught. So I did that for a few months over lockdown, because obviously a lot of things shut down. There wasn't a lot of things to do. The business was just kind of scraping along. So I was like, I've got some time. Let's learn negotiation and improve my communication skills in that sense. So yeah.
What an area to apply in. What was that like?
I didn't get very many calls because a lot of it was training. But in the training, we did a lot of like scenarios, sort of, what do you call it?
Like live role play almost.
Role play, yeah. And I was implementing what Chris had written about in the book, and the guy's like, "Oh, that's really good. We might use that." I think I was only put on for like a couple of weeks on the calls. I didn't really get anything too crazy, but it was just, this guy says he'd done this, and that was really good and helpful. I'm going to do it because I need to learn this skill.
I really respect that. I think action takers, and again, if I look at the kind of 300 odd podcasts we've done now, one of the common themes is an urgency to take action on what somebody's learned, rather than maybe to stagnate and sit in the background and let it become like, oh, I learned about this 3 weeks ago. Okay, have you tried it yet? Or have you tried some element of it in your actual real life?
Yeah, and you only learn from doing it. You can learn like 100 books about, about sales, but until you actually do it, then you have context, and then you can actually understand what that's saying. There's levels of understanding. Like, I can say something and it means nothing to someone, or something very shallow, but to someone else it has a lot of depth because they have context around it. And I think learning's the same. You need to do it, and then you can actually look to improve. Absolutely. Otherwise, there's no context.
What has allowed Prime to be such a success?
I think our ability to sell properties, number one, because that is ultimately the business, and it's also just being okay, being out there, being vulnerable, maybe. So just showing everything, whether it opens anything up to anything, like competitors can see what you're doing, whatever, even if it's tough situations, we'll just share everything. And I think people can relate to us because we're people. We're not just a brand, or not a brand, but we're not just a logo or a whatever. We're people. You deal with Lewis at Prime, John at Prime, and all the guys at Prime. And when people call up like buyers and sellers, inquiring about buying or selling a property, they've seen the guys in the videos, so they like, I want to talk to Malcolm, or I want to talk to Miles, or whatever. So I think it's just doing what no other auction house has done in terms of social media.
It's very unique how you've approached it. I mean, full-time videographers within your team. I think Nathan was one of the first appointments that John was talking about on the podcast that we did together. And I think it's clear that you have decided to completely shun what industry norms would indicate you can and should do with social.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that, again, replicate. So when John started Prime, it was basically using the model of his old employer, who is the biggest auction house in Scotland. It was a successful model, and there's a reason that they are the biggest. And we replicated it because it works. We've iterated, we've tried to make it better, which is why our growth is faster, but we have replicated a model that works. We've not tried to figure it out. It's literally, and also like in terms of how many properties we've been selling. So John was at his old employer, and they were used to selling a certain number of properties a month. That was his temperature. That was his thermostat. So when he started the business and I came in, he was used to that level of business, but he didn't have any of the overheads. So he's like, that's why he was like worried about it and anxious. I'm like, mate, it's just you.
This is more profitable.
This is like, it's just you. And you're worried about this. So it's literally just replicating something that works and then adding our own spin to it. So,
are there any disadvantages to building so publicly?
None. Well, nothing that I can see. nothing. I mean, I'm sure there's probably something, but you'd need to have like a split test. I don't know.
Oh yeah, you would need to run an experiment
Yeah.
in another parallel universe where Prime don't post on social media and don't talk about the fact that you want to be the biggest auction house in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Like we did a podcast with Chris Deal that I know you had in the podcast. We did a wee video in our office, and I was asking him about auctions, and I was like what are some shady things that auction houses do? Like just tell us, and so the people listening can see what's your experience been with auctions. How do you avoid being burned? So we're willing to talk about things that happen in this industry, being very open with it, and I think that goes a long way in building trust.
I think it does. And then you can show how different you are by using case studies. So if Chris says, oh, this happened with this auction house down south that he was dealing with in Newcastle or whatever, and then he'd be like, but in contrast, how Prime do it is this with their fees or our structure or our process. And then people can immediately draw a line between this is how the industry is typically operated and this is the Prime standard that we adhere to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite a sort of corporate suit and tie estate agency type world, but like, you know, we're sitting in polo shirts, we're young guys, we want to sell properties, we're very open about it. That's how we make money. We don't get paid until these things sell, so we want to sell them. And if you want to buy, then we will do our best for you to buy them. Sellers the same. If you want to sell property, we only get paid if we sell it, so we will do our best to sell it.
We were at dinner the other night and you were laughing that you see some auction houses holding up this sort of marketing ploy that we don't charge any fees. What on earth's going on there?
I think it's probably a poor way to attract clients, to reduce the barrier to entry for a client to work with you. I don't think it does you any favours. But if they want to do that, that's fine. But I think people, I mean, how can you not charge fees? Like, just naturally, you're going to be like, as a client, how do you make money then? And if I'm not paying any fees, what's your service like? So it's almost like you charge bigger fees, you get more respect from your clients, you get more buy-in. It's kind of a maybe counterintuitive a wee bit, but you charge. I mean, we're probably we charge good fees, but because we can deliver, and people know that, and that's become the sort of brand of Prime.
You would rather that when you position yourself as like a premium service than the cheapest service.
Yeah,
you're not going to get. And we mentioned Ferraris earlier. You're not going to get Ferrari quality at Skoda prices.
No, definitely not. You get what you pay for. And the funny thing is about estate agents and auctioneers, it's based on results. You either sell it or you don't. And if we charge a slightly higher fee, but we get you an extra 20 grand or 30 grand, is it worth it?
Yeah, exactly that. And there's like so many ways you can frame that. Look, if you could get, I think we can talk about how you guys are skilled with ads, but if you can put £1 into this ad and it returns £3 on your back end, you're not going to be able to find enough pounds to get to put in because you're going to be so desperate. So in the same way, if somebody can pay a slightly higher fee at auction but know they're going to get far higher value for their property, then they would bite your hand off at the end result. People care about the after cause of what happens with your service, not necessarily the service itself or the nuts and bolts of it. Yeah,
well, that's it. And it's a funny conversation because people who are with an estate agent now, which is a lot of where our clients come from, they're not selling, and they're like, we tell them our fees, and they say, oh, well, my estate agent is charging me this amount, and I'm like, well, they're not charging you anything because it's not selling. So if you want to sell it, this is what it has to be.
It is funny, isn't it? People have this conception that, oh, that's not value for money. But if you're not getting the service or the outcome that you want from the service, then there's no value for money or exchange there.
That's it. Exactly.
I've been lucky to spend time in the office with you, John, and the team, and I've seen the culture that you're building. What role does that play?
Culture-wise, I think we've tried to make it a very fun working environment where the guys can let their hair down, but they also know that it's a results-driven business. Without sales, we don't get paid, and there's no business. So I think all the guys are bought in. They're bought into the vision. They're bought into what we're doing. They see that we spend a lot of time developing them. So just on the back of like, initially in the early days of Prime, like learning from John about negotiation and all that kind of stuff, I then took on the role of basically closing pretty much all of the offers that were on the table and just being super conscious about what I was doing to document the process. And again, it's kind of like John has been in the business for so long and he just does things. He doesn't think about why he does things. Whereas I've come in and I can look at objectively what he's doing down to the words he uses, which now all the guys use. So it's literally a system. And I can systemize it and I can be like, right guys, when an offer comes in, this is how it works, and this is what you say, and this is how you structure it. So I've done a couple of internal courses for the guys on how to sign up leads and then how to close deals. It's called deal making, and it's a course that took me a long time to put together, because I wanted it to be really, really good and cover everything, but also make it super simple, so super clear, but covers everything. And it's kind of like that whole spending extra time. So it's like the Hormozy thing of, you could write a book in a couple of months, or it can take 3 years to write it. And the input's a lot different, but the output's massively different as well. And I think the guys have taken a lot from that, and they're now starting to close their own deals, which is something that we've just kind of handed the reins over very recently on, because they now have the knowledge and the systems to do so. So the guys can see that we're invested in them. It's a quality over quantity business in terms of everything, staff included. When someone comes in, I mean, we've had one person leave recently, who's our first hire to go and work somewhere else. But apart from that, because he wanted to move to Dubai, and then apart from that, no one's left. And the couple of hires that haven't worked out is because very quickly we were like, look, this
It's not a good
probably
fit.
isn't for you. And they were very,
For a sales role, that's really high retention. Like from teams that I've hired and fired over the last couple of years, it's really difficult to get people who understand what BD really takes and to actually get up and running at the level they need to be. And I think you guys have a patience and a support network for them to develop and kind of kick on. And the time that I spent with the guys, you can see some of them are really like making vast improvements from the kind of raw materials that you brought in.
yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like sound cheesy, maybe Big Brother relationship, in the sense that, we're invested in them, they're invested in what we're doing. We've aligned our interests. We all want to make money. We all want to do good, and we want it to be like a family, and I think it has become that way.
Yeah, you give them a lot of support and training. What would you say the ingredients that make up a good salesperson are?
I think being relentless, but understanding how to talk to people. So you can be relentless, but also not rude. You can be persistent, but not rude. And there's a certain skill to that, and you'll know this yourself. It's just, I think it's a lot of nuance. But I think that the raw materials would be persistence, an ability to talk to people, and just, yeah, I think that's probably all you need. Just persistence.
Yeah, I certainly think so. And one of the key terms that I've talked about in my coaching has been having positive intent. And I think I see that with the way that you guys talk to sellers and buyers. It's always, how do we move you towards the solution that works for both parties here? And I know that when I go through buying experiences, I like to be dealing with somebody that I feel like they know what they're talking about, and they have this relentless positive intent to get us to the finish line in the way that suits all parties involved. And I know that when I'm at my best on the phone and my best on my pitch meetings, it's when people feel that energy from me of like, look, I'm going to help us get this done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's one of the things in the course is conviction. You need to have conviction when you speak to clients, because clients can feel that off you. If you genuinely believe that your service can help them, it doesn't become a sales thing. It's like you helping someone, and they can feel that when they speak to you. If you're just chatting shit because you don't believe in it, they're also going to feel that. And your conversion rates and all of the metrics will show that. So the very first part of the course for signing up leads and getting sellers on board is conviction. If you lack in conviction, fix that first. Go and read your good reviews. Go and read it, or go and chat to the guys about a sale they've done that really helped someone out. And once you believe that, get back on the phones.
Yeah, completely agree. And I was talking at the This Is Wealth event, and John was in the crowd, and I was laughing with him afterwards, because one of the principles for like communication I talk about is speaking with certainty. Nobody's ever going to buy from somebody that ums and ehs too often. Don't get me wrong, you can sometimes have filler words that makes you seem like you're being considerate and you're thinking. And I told a story at the talk that when I first started cold calling, maybe 2016, I was still living at home with my parents, and at lunch I'd be sat in the kitchen and my mum would come through to through and she'd be like, oh, how have your calls gone this morning? I'd be like, oh, well, I booked this meeting, or I only got hung up once, or I've left 5 voicemails this morning. And she'd be like, I can hear you and you're ehing and umming a lot. And she said that from a place of constructive criticism, and that's why I have a great family. They're able to tell you these things rather than be like, oh, you sound great, son. You're a star. My handsome boy. That's no use to me. And I was umming and ahhing because I didn't know necessarily what I was going to say next. I didn't know, not necessarily my script, but I didn't know my flow. I didn't know how to counter if somebody came at me with a particular objection, whether it was time, whether it was money, whether it was market fit, whatever it was. And then I had to go through the process, like you did, of doing so many calls that I eventually got to a place where I hardly ever air them. In fact, if you listen to me on the podcast more often than not, it's very, very rare. And I'm able to have different maybe breathing strategies or speaking strategies that enable me to sound really clear and certain. And I know that that's more convincing for the listener or for people I'm selling to in my day job.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, again, certainty, what you've said, certainty and conviction. And that comes from reps and improving and listening to yourself again. If you get recordings, that's a great method.
How did you find the early days of listening back to game tape? Because I call it game tape. I listen back to the podcast even now.
I think I don't know if we listened back to calls, but just doing them and just knowing how you felt in the moment, saying something and that didn't hit, or saying something and that really worked, and then just noting it down. So I'd always note down everything that I was doing. So yeah, I think you just develop through doing, and if you can listen back to stuff, even better.
Some people cringe when they hear themselves, don't they?
Yeah,
I used to a lot, but I've gotten better at just detaching from it emotionally. Even there's a couple episodes I was I don't talk about being nervous, but I was more excited. I was interviewing Daniel Priestley in Dubai in November 2023, and I was pretty hyped about that. And I listened back and I was saying the word fascinating after quite a lot of what he said. It was like a verbal tick. You hear it a lot of the times, and some of my guests will listen back and they'll say to me, oh, I said 100% a lot to like acknowledge points you were making, Colin. I said, that's just because you haven't recorded an hour and a half long podcast before, and you don't realize that you use this particular filler word in your day job, and it's more unpleasant because you've listened to yourself for an hour and a half straight, rather than if you listen to a five-minute conversation, you maybe said it twice, whereas across a podcast, because you've said it 15 times, it becomes more of an issue. But it's only through awareness that you can improve. Yes,
and listening back is a great way of doing it. If you don't like the way maybe you say things in person as well, do it in front of a mirror. It's uncomfortable, and listening back to yourself is uncomfortable, but that's how you're gonna improve, because you will listen to things, you'll be like, right, I didn't like the way I said that, and you will only be able to do that if you actually listen back to calls and stuff.
Short-term pain for long-term gain.
Absolutely.
You said one of your big drivers for getting into business was to invest in property. You've been doing that for a long period of time now. What has that journey been like?
It's been good. So started with Gemma, my now wife, back in 2020. We put some money together that we both had to buy a flat in Edinburgh. It was just BRR strategy. So we bought it, did it up, refinanced it, pulled the money back out, and went again. We did 8 properties after that we did another 7. So we got 8 buy-to-lets. And now I am just paying off the mortgages because I don't want debt in my personal portfolio.
I was listening to you speak to Stephen, who's been on the show, and Nick about this in the Scottish probably podcast. How does that approach differ to what a lot of people in your space do?
I think, do you know what? It's probably not the best approach. Like, there's no right or wrong approach. I mean, debt is just a tool, it's how you use it. But I think you do need debt to an extent to grow a portfolio if that's what you want to do. But I would rather, learn how to make the money first and then buy assets that I actually want to hold versus stuff that I can BRR and might be, lower quality and then maybe down the line I have to, sell in a distressed fashion, because that's a lot of our business as well. So you come across a lot of case studies of people that have leveraged too much and
you've seen this firsthand. That's funny.
But yes, so the main thing with property was I want to have a portfolio, but I don't want to, again, divert focus. So for me right now, it's just putting money into clearing off the debts. So paid off a few of the properties, want to pay off another couple this year. And then once they're all paid off, start buying again, but just cash. I don't want to buy with any lending. However, this is investing. There's a difference between investing and trading, right? Trading goods or services. I do trade property with John. So what we do is we will buy a property from maybe a deal sourcer or someone that can get us a property at a price that we know we can then sell via auction for a margin. So we're not holding on to it. It's not investment. It's just trading. It's the buying and selling of goods. So I do trade property, but in terms of holding, right now it's just paying off the mortgages I have.
It's interesting because I think when you speak to people who aren't maybe initiated in the property world, and I think a lot of the listeners will have heard about it from the various guests that we've had, but you can generate additional capital by buying and flipping and extracting capital from that. But then you have a lot of people that are like, oh no, but I want to build a portfolio of assets that I'm looking after. But it's interesting at this moment in time, you're focusing on, okay, well, I can actually generate more capital and then I'll deal with the adding to my portfolio when I feel like it or when I'm ready.
Yeah, it's kind of like people see it as an upside down umbrella where you do loads of things and then something works, versus you do something that works and usually in trading business, and then you can diversify into property and all the other asset classes. But you need something to invest first. If you want to build a portfolio purely using debt, where you don't have any capital, you're probably not going to build it in a very sustainable or risk averse way, because you need the debt, and you see a lot of people now, leveraging to the moon, and they've got private investors. They're obviously remortgaging at crazy valuations that if they try to sell the properties, they probably couldn't get the value. It's not something I want to do. I see properties behind the lines of defenses. So I go out into business, I trade, you fight, you do everything you have to do to create the capital and the value. I then want to store that in a very secure way. I don't want to add debt because that adds risk. So I don't want to be in a position where what I've fought for can be lost, which is just purely psychological for me.
It's an element of risk tolerance.
Yes.
And you have a good understanding of your risk tolerance?
I would say so, but it's more so like focus. I know that the return on my focus and attention is so much greater focusing on learning the skills to build a business, 7-figure and to 8-figure and to 9-figure, versus focusing my attention or split my attention into trying to buy properties. Can I source this deal, or did the number stack on this? No, actually, I'm just going to focus on prime, adding an extra 10 properties a month to the number that we sell. That's it. It is interesting, and I very much got, I don't know if I was red pilled, but woken up by a gentleman called Nick Majuli. He wrote a book in 2022 called Just Keep Buying, and it was a real coup at the time to get him on the podcast, and we're speaking to him, and he was speaking about it's so much more important that people focus on increasing the amount they're putting into the stock market than what stocks they pick or what funds they're in. And his example was, okay, great, you've got a investment habit, set up a direct debit of £500 a month into your ISA. That's great. That's $6,000 a year. If you pick a decent stock or a decent fund or ETF and it's doing 10% a year, that's £600. At what point do we focus on trying to make that £500, £1,000 or £1,500? Because then the percentage gain is much more important, because you and I both know 10% of £6,000, sorry, £6,000 is £600. You could earn £600 in your day job by just getting really good at your day job a little bit more often. So guys in your space can earn great commissions on the properties they sell. If they were more interested in maybe not thinking about, I want to invest in this stock or this crypto coin, if they instead just massively increased their earning power and then had more power and weight to go into the market with, then the percentage gains are actually more meaningful. That's it. I mean, the return on your own skills are not going to be matched for a very long time. If you can learn how to make money and it's like a skill stack, again, it's purely Hormozy. And going back to focus, I only listen to Hormozy in terms of business because I resonate with what he says. So that is the only podcast I listen to. And same with other aspects of my life. There's someone that I listen to for health. That's it. No one else. Because for me, I trust the person. I'm happy to just consume versus being distracted. But yeah, so what was the question again? The question was around the sheer weight of what you put into the market. And I think that's what you're doing rather than focusing otherwise. And I actually really appreciate what you're saying about you found a creator in a particular space that you resonate with. So you go all in the same way for health. Like you say, there's so many different distracting voices that maybe say things differently. Yeah. You might as well pick one and back your horse and commit to it. And now it might be in a year's time that you're like, okay, well, I've listened to Gary Brecker for a year and I think he's really helped me. But actually, one of my friends has been listening to
whoever, and I'm going to pivot and go down that route. But you give it enough time to see if it's going to work.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, so just like going all in and trying to get your earning potential up is so important, because skills stack. So you learn a skill, and then you learn another skill, and then another one, and that combination, even if they're totally different skills, make you very unique in the marketplace and increase your value to the marketplace based on what those skills are. So it's like Hormozy gives the example of someone who wants to learn bookkeeping, so they learn to be a bookkeeper, and then they learn about how to save tax. They do a course, blah, 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 become an accountant, slightly more valuable to the marketplace. Then they learn about, how to structure companies, that kind of stuff. And then they become a financial director, CFO, whatever. And then they learn about M&A and deal making, and they become a rainmaker. The jump in skills is linear, but the jump in value and income potential is exponential. And that's something I really resonate with. So skills are probably the best return on your time and effort.
If you can stack those, like you say, you become far more valuable, and then the amount that you can put into the stock market or into the property investment space is far higher, and it carries much more weight. Because, for example, if you can get, I always see this with the fixed return deals that you can do with different property sources or property deal makers. So if I give Christy L, who's been on the pod, 30 grand and I get 33 back, great. But if I'm giving him 100 grand and I'm getting 110 grand back, that is noticeably different than that. And money makes money at that point in time.
Absolutely. So it's just getting your pot to a size where that becomes an option, versus just like trying to grow a tiny wee pot, not focusing on how to increase it. Increase the inputs, increase top of the funnel.
It's often forgotten, isn't it? I think in this world where we're so distracted by different choices and different opportunities and different vehicles, as we've spoken about, it's really hard sometimes to be ruthless and put the blinkers on, so to speak.
Yeah. It's just focus and priorities, and it's just knowing what to focus on, knowing what things to do next, what moves to make to do next. Because people that are the furthest advanced don't go faster. It's another Hormozy thing. They just know what to do. They just make fewer moves with bigger impact. So yeah, focus again. It's another thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can see you live by that as well. You mentioned that you and Gemma went into business together, and now you're married. How do you find working alongside your spouse?
Great. Love working with Gemma. She's amazing. She's super diligent. She's super hardworking. She's super disciplined. And I think at the start we kind of had to figure out our roles within our investment business, but she's awesome at project managing and doing all that stuff. She dealt with all the builders. She had the relationships with all of our contractors and everything. So yeah, it's been awesome, and it's cool building something together, because you're both have a vested interest as partners. It's different than having like a JV partner for one deal. It's like, this is your life partner, and you do things a certain way.
I can see that. What kind of complementary skills do the two of you have? Because if I look at you and John, I can see that. How does it work from a property investment perspective?
I think for the investment side of things, I was focused on, creating the capital, if you want to look at it that way, through the business. And Gemma was very much involved in deploying it and managing the refurbs and doing all that kind of stuff. So in that sense, it worked really well.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think when you find a relationship that can be a business relationship as well, then it's quite a special one. And you see lots of couples do really, really well. And I spoke to a gentleman, Adam Rossi, in the US. My friend was like ghostwriting for him on LinkedIn. He's like, mate, you need to have this guy on the show. And he built a tech company with his wife, and he was like, there's nobody I would rather build it with. And that stayed with me, because I think some people think, oh, I couldn't possibly work with my spouse. But then you hear people like yourself and Adam say things with that level of feeling, and you think, okay, well, they must have it right.
Yeah, I think everyone's different. Sometimes it won't work working with your spouse for whatever reason. I think for us, we're both quite similar people. Sometimes that can be an issue, because we're both very stubborn and hard-headed, but we can work together business-wise. So that makes our sort of other parts of the relationship work as well, because we understand how to kind of get on with it. We have a goal. In business, you have a goal. There's an outcome you want. In life, we have an outcome that we want, so we kind of approach it the same way. So it kind of, times might be hard, but we both know what we want, and that kind of gets through it.
You've got the same end point and destination and goal in mind.
Yeah.
We've spoken a lot about Hormozy, and I think it's great that you've taken so much from one particular individual. You've like really wrung out the tell of his content, and he's going to keep producing, so you're going to keep getting more and more from it. Is there any particular book or lesson or insight that you reflect on often?
I think, his books, $100 million offers and $100 million leads, are incredible. I think I put together the whole thing about $100 million offers is how to make an offer people feel stupid saying no to. And I literally put together the host clean proposal, albeit it was to sell the company for the potential buyers after reading that book. So I figured, and we did a lot, applied the concepts to basically everything that we've done in Prime. So our offer of selling a property in 28 days, you set the price, no marketing fees, no sale, no fee. All of that came off the back of a lot of intense study of that book and the concepts he talks about, figuring out what our offer is to the marketplace, figuring out what is value, what's the equation of value, and then crafting all the beautiful landing pages and all other stuff and the funnels that you have to create to run campaigns. So definitely that book, or those two books, have been game changers.
And is there anything that you reflect upon and you're like, I'm so glad that I learned that particular skill?
I think everything you learn is going to be useful to some degree. And as I said, it's your specific combination of skills, no matter how different they are or unique, that makes you who you are, and it makes your value in the marketplace. So I think everything's valuable, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think as long as you're continuing to stack those and build on those, then you become a bit of a, like you say, a very high value person within the market.
Yeah, and then you'll probably realise through doing it, like the next step lights up, you'll know maybe what skill to get next. It's not like you need to have a plan for where you want to go in terms of skills. You'll learn something and you'll be like, right, I know that having this as well is going to make me so much more valuable. And then that's how it kind of leads the path for you.
Every time we've spoken, and you've really brought this to the fore during today's conversation, is your recall from the likes of a Hormozi or what you've consumed is really, really strong. Do you have any advice for listeners for how they could improve their recall from maybe the content that they're consuming?
I think I listened to a lot of books, a lot of podcast hosts, a lot of people in business over the years to get, again, some context, because you need context. You need to know, right, I kind of like what this guy's saying, don't really like what he's saying. And you take and you pick and choose. But once you understand kind of who you are, and also through doing business, what path you want to be on, you'll then find someone that you resonate with. And I think, again, focus. Just,
you backed one horse.
Yeah.
How do you maybe retain those concepts though? Because I think that's something that people really struggle with. So you're consuming a lot of Hormozi, but you've reeled off 20, 30 different ideas from Hormozi and concepts that you've actioned within your business. What's helped you be able to do that?
Because if you're living the business, if you're actively playing out those concepts, you're matching a theory to something that's actually happening. So it's a lot easier to retain. I think if you're actively in business and implementing things as you listen to them, that's how you really retain concepts, because you're literally tying what you've heard to an experience, and then you develop your knowledge that way.
Do you know what I think might be a way that you've retained it as well, and it's definitely helped me when I've been doing my sales coaching? One of the best ways to prove to yourself that you understand something is to teach it on to others, because you must fully understand something really, really well to explain it, not in layman's terms, but in more basic terms that somebody can understand it. So when I was pulling together the slide deck to come into your office for the guys that we're doing a little bit of training with, I'm writing down these concepts in the slides and I'm thinking, oh, that's how to say it. And that's what I do. And it was refreshing my memory. And I was coaching somebody the other day. He's a wealth advisor. And I was speaking about how to position himself with people on LinkedIn over DM. And I'm thinking, well, my DMs look like this, this, this. What does each of those lines in that DM achieve? And then we'll just change it over so it works in his particular marketplace. And then I was doing my own LinkedIn DMs today and I was like, oh, I'm actually better at this again because I've just taught Dave how to do it. And I really think that when you're in the office teaching guys about Hormozi concepts and using them within your business, it's probably a deadly combination of you must truly understand something if you're able to explain it to somebody else.
Yeah, definitely. And just distilling what it means, and especially to what we're doing. So it's like a concept is fine, but then you need to apply it to what they're actively doing on a day-to-day basis. So that's been a lot of fun and a great experience, because now I feel like I understand it better, as you've said, through trying to condense it and apply it to what we're doing. But yeah, that whole process has been great.
It's been really cool to see. You brought a lot of wisdom to today's podcast. What do you hope you achieve by the age of 30 to feel like it's been a success these next few years?
I think just getting primed to where we want it to be. So we've got the goal of getting to $1 million a month in fees in the next couple of years. So again, every goal is arbitrary. I mean, why do you want that? Because it's a goal, it's something to aim for, and then the goalposts will get moved once we get there. But it's just staying the course and achieving what we want to achieve in the business. Personally, I think, we've just had a baby, we want to keep growing the family. That'd be great.
Amazing.
And yeah, just keep doing what we're doing. So stay the course.
I feel like you're living in a lot of alignment just now.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And there's a lot of things that you're doing that they don't come easy, but they come naturally because it's what you really truly want to do.
Yeah, and it's like elimination of alternatives with everything. The business, marriage, you're with one person. That's all other options are eliminated. It means your focus is very, you've got the blinkers on, but it means you can really advance at a pace maybe you couldn't do otherwise. So yeah, everything is it's almost like we've built the foundations of loads of different parts of my life, and now it's just let's build.
Nicely. So I'm looking forward to watching you build. I've had a great fun the conversation. I'm sure the listeners have as well. If they want to continue the conversation with you, where should they head towards?
You can find me on Instagram. So it's Lewis_property_auctioneer, and Lewis is spelled Luis.
Beautiful stuff, Lewis. That'll be linked in the show notes. Thank you to you.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you to the listener. I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.